I'm pretty sure my manager tried to poison me. Not in a movie way. No vile, no evil monologue, no dramatic music. Just a paper cup of office coffee that smelled wrong, a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and one stupid split-second decision where I swapped mugs with the guy standing next to me. 10 minutes later, he was on the floor, and everyone was shouting his name. If I tell this story wrong, it's going to sound paranoid. So let me start with this. I'm not dramatic. I'm the quiet guy in the office. The one who shows up 5 minutes early, leaves 5 minutes late, and eats lunch at his desk because it's easier than making small talk in the break room. My name is Evan. I do data reporting for a mid-sized logistics company. I'm the kind of person you forget was in the meeting 5 minutes after the meeting ends. My manager, on the other hand, is unforgettable. His name is Daniel Carver, but everyone calls him Carver, like we're all still in college or on a team. Early 40s, always in a pressed shirt, never a wrinkle, never a stain. He has this way of listening to you with his head tilted and his mouth half smiling, like he's doing you a favor just by letting you speak. He doesn't yell. He doesn't need to. He remembers things. The week you came in late 3 days in a row, the time you snapped at a colleague, the tiny mistake in a spreadsheet from 8 months ago. He stores it all and then uses it exactly when it hurts most. I spent 3 years making sure I was invisible to that kind of man. No drama, no gossip, just clean reports and polite mourning in the hallway. So when he walked into the office kitchen that Monday morning and said, "Evan, got you a coffee," my first reaction was confusion. It was 8:12 a.m. I remember because I'd just put my phone face down on the counter after checking the time. The kitchen smelled like burnt toast and cheap beans, the usual Monday mix, fluorescent lights, humming fridge, the drip machine burping out another pot. Carver walked in with 2 cardboard cups from the cafe across the street, not from the office machine, from the place that actually makes drinkable coffee. He almost never did that. He bought his own, sure, but not for anyone else. If he praised you, it was in an email CC'd to his boss. If he rewarded you, it was with a slightly less soul-destroying task. But now he held out a cup with my name written on the lid in black marker. "Figured you could use it," he said. "You were on that report till what, 9:30 on Friday?" I blinked. Yeah, thanks." He set the other cup on the counter near the microwave. No name on that one. Just a brown lid. Steam curling from the vent. Kyle stepped into the kitchen right then, humming something off key. Kyle's the kind of guy HR loves. Friendly, social, never shuts up, but somehow still gets everything done. He works on the analytics team across from my desk. Extrovert, with a swivel chair. "Ooh, fancy coffee," he said, dropping his mug in the sink with a clatter. "Did I miss a birthday?" Carver laughed lightly. "Just felt generous." He turned back to me. "Try it, Evan. Want to make sure they got it right." It was a normal sentence. People say stuff like that all the time, but the way he said it lodged in my stomach. The tone was off. Too gentle, too focused. His eyes didn't leave my face. He wasn't looking at the coffee at all. I lifted the lid. Steam hit me in the face. It should have smelled like their usual dark roast. It didn't. It smelled wrong. There was the coffee smell, sure, but underneath it was something metallic and sharp, like wet coins and cleaning chemicals. Not strong enough to make me gag, but enough to make my brain go, "Don't drink that." "You okay?" Kyle asked, opening a cabinet, oblivious. "Yeah," I said automatically, even as my hand froze halfway to my mouth. I told myself I was being stupid. Maybe they changed beans. Maybe Carver added something. Sweetener, that protein powder he sometimes uses. I looked at him. He was watching me with that polite half-smile, hands in his pockets. Waiting. The silence in that crappy little kitchen got heavy. I felt ridiculous for hesitating. What was I going to say? "Sorry, boss, this smells weird. Can you take the first sip like we're in some medieval kingdom? And you're my food taster?" My throat went dry. I lowered the cup slightly. "What did you get?" I asked, stalling. "Black, Like you always take it, he said immediately. Same as Friday when we passed the place after the client meeting. He remembered that. Of course he did. Kyle grabbed the other cup off the counter. Is this one up for grabs? Before I could think, I heard myself say, Actually, that might be mine. You can take this one. And I swapped them. Fast. Almost too fast. I don't know why I did it. To this day, I can't explain the exact logic. It was pure instinct. A little voice in my head screaming, Not that one. Carver's eyes flicked down to our hands. Just for a second. A tiny flash. He didn't say anything. His smile didn't move. But I saw something cross his face. Surprise, then irritation, like I'd stepped out of a script he wrote. Works for me, Kyle said. He tore off the lid and took a big gulp, like he hadn't had water in 3 days. Damn, that's hot. He winced. But he kept drinking. I lifted the cup I'd ended up with and took a cautious sip. It tasted normal. Bitter, cheap, slightly burnt. No metal, no chemical smell. Just coffee. If I had stopped there, I would have shrugged it off. Bad nose, overthinking, whatever. But then Carver spoke again. So, he said casually, reaching past me to toss something in the trash. How's the workload? Not too much on your plate? My body reacted before my brain did. Tight shoulders, shallow breath. It was the kind of question he asked right before he dumped something horrible on you. It's fine, I said. Report should be ready by Wednesday. He nodded. Good. You're reliable, Evan. I like that. He touched my shoulder lightly. No one else would have thought anything of it, and left the kitchen. Just me, Kyle, and the humming fridge. Kyle was leaning against the counter, scrolling his phone with one hand, sipping with the other. Free coffee from the dragon himself, he said. Must be my lucky day. I stared at him. You feeling okay? He laughed. Dude, I took one sip. I'm not going to drop dead in the kitchen. Yeah, I said. I know. But my heart wouldn't slow down. It beat against my ribs like it wanted out. The metallic smell lingered in my nose, even though it wasn't coming from my cup anymore. We went back to our desks. Open-plan office. Rows of white desks. Gray chairs. Low conversations. The kind of place where keyboards are louder than people. Carver's glass office was in the corner, facing us like an aquarium where the shark can see all the fish. As I sat down, I saw him inside, talking on the phone, one hand covering his mouth. His eyes slid over the floor, landed on me, then on Kyle, then back to me. I looked away first. I hate that I remember that detail, but I do. For the first 15 minutes, nothing happened. I stared at spreadsheets until the numbers blurred. Beside me, Kyle hummed, joked with the girl in HR over Slack, answered an email out loud like he always did. Normal, annoying, alive. Then he went quiet. At first, I didn't notice. Silence is my default. But eventually, the lack of noise from his side of the desk registered. I glanced over. He was sitting too still, one hand on his mouse, eyes unfocused on the screen. There was sweat on his forehead. His skin looked off, a shade too pale, with this weird gray undercurrent. You good? I asked. He swallowed hard. Yeah, he said, but his voice came out thin. Just dizzy for a second. Water? He nodded. When he stood up, his chair rolled back too fast and banged into the desk behind him. A couple people looked over. He laughed it off and took a step, then another. On the third step, his knee buckled. There was this tiny, empty sound, his cup tipping, the lid popping off, coffee splashing across the carpet. Then a heavier sound, Kyle hitting the floor. Someone shouted his name. Someone else yelled to call 911. Chairs scraped. I was already on my feet, heart hammering, while across the room, behind the glass, my manager slowly set his phone down and watched. Kyle lay on the floor, barely conscious, while people gathered around him in a frantic circle that didn't actually help anyone. Someone kept repeating his name. Someone else rushed for the first aid kit like they'd ever opened one before. HR called an ambulance. The receptionist brought water, even though Kyle couldn't drink. I stood there uselessly, my hands cold, my heartbeat too loud. I'd never seen someone collapse like that. not at work, not with a coffee cup still rolling in a puddle beside him. And the whole time, Carver watched from behind his glass office wall. Arms crossed, expression unreadable, like he was studying an experiment. When the paramedics arrived and wheeled Kyle out, Carver finally stepped out of his office, clapping his hands once like he was dismissing a meeting. "All right, everyone, back to work, please. Give space. Don't crowd the hallway." His tone wasn't shaken, not even concerned. If anything, he sounded annoyed. He glanced at me last. "You okay, Evan? You look pale." I forced my voice not to shake. He collapsed. "Yes," he said. "Let's not jump to conclusions. People faint." That didn't look like fainting. Carver tilted his head, studying my face with a soft smile that somehow made me want to step back. "You're rattled. Take a moment if you need one." Then he turned and walked away, leaving the scent of his aftershave lingering in the air, a vanilla sandalwood mix, too sweet, too familiar. I returned to my desk, but the spreadsheet on my screen blurred. I kept replaying the scene in my head. Kyle grabbing the cup, taking that big sip without thinking. That cup wasn't meant for him. The thought crawled up my spine, slow and cold. At 10:17 a.m., Carver passed by my desk, leaned down just enough that only I could hear him, and whispered, "Try to stay focused today. Panic spreads." Then he tapped the edge of my monitor and walked off. I stared after him, jaw tight. He hadn't asked about Kyle, hadn't checked in, hadn't expressed even a performative ounce of concern. He only cared about panic. The office moved in strange patterns for the next hour. Whispers, glances, people trying to work, while clearly checking their phones for updates. I overheard 2 people in the hallway. It was like he couldn't breathe. He looked poisoned. Jesus, don't say that. I pretended to ignore them, but every word carved deeper. My phone buzzed at 11:03. A text from our HR rep, Anna. "Kyle is stable. Dehydration plus blood pressure. They're keeping him for tests. Dehydration? Really?" Kyle drank water constantly. He joked about flushing out the toxins at least once a day, and he'd been fine all morning until the coffee. My hand tightened around my phone until the plastic creaked. A few minutes later, I heard the familiar low voice behind me. Carver again. "I talked to HR," he said. "Kyle will be fine. Turns out he skipped breakfast. Combine that with caffeine and stress." He shrugged. "Bodies react." "That's it?" I asked. "What more do you want?" His smile sharpened. "A conspiracy." I swallowed back the first answer that came to mind. He leaned in slightly. "Look at me, Evan." I didn't want to, but I did. His eyes held nothing. No warmth, no fear, no discomfort. Just calculation. "You swapped cups this morning," he said softly, like he was commenting on the weather. My stomach dropped. "I saw it," he added. "Quick reflexes. Interesting." Interesting, not odd, not funny, not surprising. Interesting. I forced my face blank. It was nothing. "Of course," he said, straightening. "Still, you're more observant than I gave you credit for." He walked away before I could respond. I sat there frozen, the carpet's gray pattern suddenly too sharp under my shoes. My pulse thudded in my ears. He saw the swap. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't confused. It was like he'd anticipated it, or was waiting to see what I'd do. Around noon, I slipped away to the break room, needing air. The room was empty except for the smell, that sour metallic scent lingering near the trash bin. Someone had thrown away the cup Kyle used. The lid was still visible at the top. I stared at it, my thoughts spiraling. If something had been in that drink, it was gone now. Soaked into the office carpet, washed down Kyle's throat, swirling somewhere in the trash with paper towels and sandwich wrappers, and then a memory hit me like a punch. 2 months earlier, an employee named Sarah from accounting quit out of nowhere after a health scare. Rumors said she fainted in the office bathroom and hit her head. No one ever got details. Carver handled her exit paperwork personally, and a few weeks before that, another guy from operations, was suddenly let go after erratic behavior. He'd been quiet too, kept to himself, like me. I hadn't connected any of it back then. Why would I? People get sick. People quit. People get fired. But now the pattern was too dark to ignore. Footsteps approached. I stiffened, turning around. It was Anna from HR, holding a stack of folders. "Evan," she said, lowering her voice, "just so you know, Kyle's family is asking questions. They think this wasn't just fainting." My mouth went dry. "Did they say anything else?" She shook her head. "They're not buying the dehydration explanation, and honestly, neither am I." Her eyes darted toward Carver's office. "And I'm not the only one." Something hot and electric surged through my chest. Maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe someone else finally saw what I'd been seeing. I wanted to ask more, but she stepped closer and whispered, "Be careful, he's watching you." As she left, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face tightened. "It's him," she said quietly. "Carver wants to meet in private, right now." I watched her walk away, dread curling in my stomach. Something was unfolding, something deliberate, something dangerous, and part of me knew this was only the beginning. I didn't go back to my desk right away. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and the air in the break room felt too thick, like the room itself was warning me to keep moving. I splashed cold water on my face in the restroom, leaned on the sink, and stared at my reflection. I looked like someone who just witnessed an accident. But the truth was uglier. I looked like someone who knew the accident wasn't an accident. Kyle was in the hospital because of a drink meant for me. Carver had seen me swap the cups. He wasn't angry. He wasn't confused. He was interested. That was the moment I realized something frightening. Carver had planned for me to react. Not the way I did, maybe, but in some way. Like he had a playbook for my behavior. I dried my face and walked out, not to my desk, but to the archive room. No cameras, no windows, just shelves and boxes and dust. I needed time to think, but as soon as I stepped inside, something caught my eye. A folder on the top of a metal cart. Not filed, not labeled, just left open as if someone dropped it when they heard footsteps. Inside were pages marked "Confidential," printouts of internal performance logs and HR notes. At first I thought it belonged to Anna. HR lived in these documents, but the handwriting on the margins wasn't hers. I recognized the pen strokes immediately. Small, tight, angled to the right. Carver's handwriting. Half the notes were about Kyle. Missed deadlines, exaggerated, attitude concerns, made up, possible substance misuse. A lie so bold I had to read it twice, and then my name. Evan Carter, declining performance, withdrawn, low engagement, possible stress reaction, monitor for instability. Instability. I almost laughed. I'd never had a write-up, never had an issue. But here in Carver's own pen was a narrative he'd been building quietly, piece by piece, a setup. I flipped through the pages faster. Patterns emerged. Sarah's exit, erratic behavior, medical concerns, operations guy, aggressive outbursts. Two others I barely even remembered. Volatile, unpredictable, concerning judgment. Carver wasn't just documenting performance. He was curating character failures, planting defects in people, one note at a time, until HR didn't question the final shove. But Kyle was too stable, too well-liked, too loud for Carver to destroy with rumors. So Carver had done something else. My stomach twisted with realization that made my knees weak. Kyle getting sick wasn't a plan B. Kyle getting sick was a calculation, a test run, and I was meant to be the test subject. I closed the folder and slid it into my bag, my heart pounding so hard I thought the whole office must hear it. Carver had crossed a line most managers don't even know exists. He wasn't just controlling. He wasn't just manipulative. He was dangerous. I stepped into the hallway and nearly collided with him. "Evan," he said pleasantly. "Looking for something?" My throat tightened. "Just grabbing old data sets." He nodded, eyes flicking to the folder, peeking from the top of my bag before darting back to my face. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Good, he said softly. I like initiative. He walked away without another word, and the moment he turned the corner, I felt my legs give out just a little. He knew I knew. The balance had shifted. Back at my desk, I tried to work, but every few minutes, Carver appeared somewhere in my peripheral vision, walking past desks he had no reason to walk past, standing at the printer without printing anything, leaning on the water cooler like a movie character pretending to be casual. By 3 p.m., I realized he wasn't watching The Office. He was watching me. The pressure in my chest grew tight enough that I couldn't ignore it. If I didn't act now, I'd lose whatever chance I had to beat him at his own game. So I waited until he went into a conference room for his afternoon call. Same time every day, 30 minutes long, door half open like always, and slipped into his office. I'd never been inside before. The room felt colder than the rest of the floor, meticulous, immaculate, not a single object out of place. It reminded me of a surgical room. On his desk lay a small black notebook, short, thin, elastic band, the same kind people use for journaling or planning. I opened it, and the world stopped. Inside were dates, initials, descriptions. SA, compliant. Discourage team involvement. MR, personal stress. Amplify. CT, isolate. Trigger conflict. KW, sociability, shears liability. Apply pressure. Then my initials. EXE, predictable. Avoid confrontation. Resistance stage begins. Next step, stress catalyst. Stress catalyst. My hands went ice cold. I kept reading. Test substance, minimal dose. Observe. Note, contingency if target refuses. Target, not employee, not staff. Target. My vision blurred for a moment, like my brain refused to process the meaning. He'd written it down. He'd actually written it down. Everything that happened to Kyle. Everything that was supposed to happen to me. All of it was here. A sound in the hallway snapped me back. Footsteps. Coming closer. I shoved the notebook in my waistband under my shirt, closed the drawer I'd opened, and slipped out the side exit of his office, just as the footsteps stopped, right outside the door. I ducked behind the column near the printer. Carver stepped into his office, humming. The hum stopped abruptly. Had he noticed something out of place? He lingered for a moment. Then the chair rolled. He sat. A beat of silence. Then a sharp bang. He slammed his desk drawers shut, hard. My heart leapt into my throat. He knew. I backed away slowly, keeping the column between us until I reached the hallway. Then I walked, calmly, steadily, to the elevator and pressed the down button like my life depended on looking normal. The elevator doors closed. Only then did I let myself breathe again. By the time I reached the parking garage, something inside me had changed. A quiet place. A cold place. A place I didn't know I had. All my life I avoided conflict. I avoided loud people, angry people, dangerous people. But standing there in the dim concrete light, with Carver's notebook burning against my skin, I realized something with an almost painful clarity. I wasn't the one who'd been cornered today. That night, I stopped being the hero. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear, not anymore, but because everything finally made sense. Every strange comment, every performance note, every person who suddenly disappeared from the office. Carver hadn't been reacting to problems. He'd been manufacturing them. And now I had the one thing he'd never planned for. Proof he'd written with his own hand. The next morning I arrived at work before sunrise. The office was dark, quiet, peaceful. I chose a desk near the window, opened my laptop, and began assembling everything. His notes, the staged write-ups, the stress catalyst outline, the timeline of employees who'd mysteriously quit or collapsed or vanished. I printed copies, stored digital backups, sent an encrypted package to my personal email, and a second one to a drive Carver could never access. At 7:42, Anna from HR walked through the door. She stopped when she saw me. "You're here early?" "I need to talk to you," I said, privately. The way her eyes sharpened told me she already sensed where this was heading. We went into a small HR office and I locked the door behind us. I placed Carver's notebook on the table and slid it toward her. She flipped it open. She stopped breathing for a moment. "Is this—" "Yes," I said. "It's his." She read 3 pages, then 4. When she reached the part with my initials, her hand trembled. "This is enough to destroy him," she whispered. "That's the point." She looked at me, really looked. "You understand what happens when I escalate this, right? This won't just be an HR complaint. This becomes legal. Criminal." "I know." A pause. "Good." She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding that breath for months. "I'm bringing in the VP," she said, "and the legal team. Stay available." When she left the room, she didn't take the notebook. She didn't have to. I'd already scanned every page. At 8:19, Carver arrived. I heard his footsteps across the office before I saw him. He walked with the same controlled confidence he always had, the gait of someone who believed he owned every inch of space he entered. He spotted me instantly. "Evan," he said, smiling too warmly. "A word?" I stood, calm, steady. The jacket I wore hid the printed folder pressing against my ribs. "Actually," I said, "the VP wants to see you." He paused. Just half a second, but it was enough. "Do they?" he asked lightly. "About what?" "You'll find out." He studied me, searching for a crack, a flinch, a tremor, anything. But I wasn't the person he'd scouted, analyzed, written about in that notebook. Something in his face tightened. "All right," he said. "Let's go together." We walked side by side down the hallway. This was the moment he'd always expected to win. The confrontation where he controlled the narrative, where he twisted truth, where he made someone look unstable, while he appeared concerned and reasonable. Except this time he was walking straight into a room full of people who'd already read his handwriting. The VP was waiting with 2 HR managers and corporate legal. Carver stepped inside with that same calm smile. "You needed me." The VP didn't return the smile. "Daniel," she said, "sit." He sat, still confident, still composed. Anna closed the door and placed 3 folders on the table. "What is this?" he asked, voice steady. No one answered. The VP opened the first folder and slid a printed page toward him. Carver looked down. His own handwriting stared back. The precise moment his expression cracked, just a flicker, like a mask slipping, was the most satisfying second of my entire adult life. "This is a misunderstanding," he began. The VP opened the second folder. More pages, more notes, more handwriting. He reached for the notebook like he could snatch it away, rewrite the evidence, rewind reality itself. But legal pulled it back before he touched it. His voice rose, thin and sharp. "You don't know what you're looking at." "We know exactly what we're looking at," legal said, "and we'll be forwarding everything to the appropriate authorities." His eyes darted toward me. Not confusion, not denial. Hatred. "You think you're clever?" he hissed softly, a whisper meant only for me. "You think you're safe?" I leaned closer, my voice barely above a breath. "I think you're done." The VP stood. "Daniel, please remove your personal items immediately. Security will escort you downstairs." It happened fast. Too fast for him to regain control. Too fast for him to manipulate anyone. He tried anyway. "You're making a mistake." Security walked in. "Let's go, sir." He stared at me one last time. A long, burning, speechless stare that said everything he couldn't say out loud. Then they walked him out. The office, the same office where he'd stalked people, broken them, documented them like insects, felt lighter the second the door shut behind him. The silence he left behind wasn't fear. It was relief. By noon, HR had sent a company-wide email announcing that Daniel Carver was no longer with the organization. No explanation, no story. But people knew. They always know. That afternoon, I visited Kyle in the hospital. He was sitting up, weak but conscious. When he saw me, he tried to joke. Dude, next time we get coffee, not sharing. I laughed, a real one this time. The relief hit me harder than expected. You're going to be okay, I told him. Yeah, thanks to you. He paused, frowning. Did you ever figure out what the hell happened? I hesitated, then shook my head gently. Some truths didn't belong to him. Some weights weren't his to carry. Just bad luck, I said softly. He accepted that. And maybe, for him, that was enough. I left the hospital just as the sun was starting to set. Warm light, quiet air. I sat in my car, took out a fresh cup of coffee from the cafe across the street, bought by my own hand, made by someone without an agenda, and took a slow, steady sip. It tasted clean, normal, safe. For the first time in a long time, the world didn't feel like it was pressing against my ribs. The tension in my shoulders melted. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. I just stopped being the guy who stayed quiet while someone else wrote the story. This time, I wrote the ending myself.